All right. Well, I'll get started here. The core people will hopefully show up somewhat soon, but we'll see. Um, all right. So what we got? New PRs this week that I saw anyway. And I confess this morning I was trying to do multiple things at once and may have missed stuff. So please feel free to correct me if I'm missing anything. All right. First one. Prometheus offered the ability to disable the cache. Um, Apparently, the cache is not needed for small deployments. I think they said. I don't know why you would actually want to disable it, but maybe there's a good reason to. Memory usage or something. I don't know. So Kifu reviewed that. I think he may have approved it. But yeah, that's there now. That's for the manager, by the way. Um,
So just a comment about that. It seems like a small deployment would benefit the most from cache since you would expect everything to fit.
yeah, that's a fair point. Yeah, I'm not exactly sure what the rationale is for it, but I suppose it doesn't hurt anything to be able to disable it. So if it's I don't know if that's what you'd want the default to be. So yeah, I don't know. It is what it is, I guess. Let's see. Adam from the core team wrote a draft PR for changing up how direct IO writes are done. Um, he's talked about this on and off, and I think he's concerned that the way he's doing it right now may not actually be safe, which may explain why I think he was seeing really huge write performance improvements. So I think he's going to go back and review this again. But the gist of it is he's really trying to change up the way that some of this works, um, which is good because we're seeing, especially with RocksDB, that it does really weird things in the right path with BlueFS that we don't like. So anyway, that's ongoing. For closed PRs, this RGW tracing implement PR closed. So Casey or Adam, does that mean we can do like really cool tracing in RGW now?
Means we can do really cool tracing in RGW eventually.
Ah, okay.
Yeah, this is building blocks and it has traces at a couple places in the request processing. So we'll
Okay.
build on that. Trace
Neat.
things other than requests, add more details to request processing itself. I think the next immediate step, this was just adding some classes into RGW. The next step is going to be to move those into the common folder to share the implementation with the existing stuff in the OSD.
Okay. So I confess I haven't used any of this stuff yet, which is kind of, I feel a little ridiculous that I haven't. Is it tough to actually like do this tracing with is it Jaeger tracing? Is that what this is?
I admit that I haven't tried to use it either.
Sure.
Um, I do think that there's probably some work that we could do on orchestration to set things up and connect them together.
Sure.
I don't think that exists yet.
It was kind of one of the problems with like LTTNG and the OSD a couple of years ago is we had stuff in there, but it was kind of so clunky to use it well that no one ever really did much with it, as far as I know. Some folks from Intel did for a while, but that was it, I think.
Yeah, I totally agree. So I really think that we do need to focus on tooling to make it usable.
Okay. Well, cool that the building blocks are there. Hopefully we'll get something out of it at some point. All right. Updated. No, there's this pull request for make some modifications to our version of the RocksDB LRU cache, and that's so that we can update RocksDB. And I have owed Kifu a review on this for like a week and a half, and it's kind of weighing on me because I haven't been able to focus on it yet. So yeah, that's waiting on me. I don't know if I'm going to get to it by the end of this week or not. Let's see. There is this incremental update mode for BlueFS log. It was reviewed, but then it failed QA. So I think Adam's going to have to go back and figure out what was wrong with it. Okay, looks like there's more updates and discussion on this RGW OSD compression bypass PR. Casey, anything new with that?
No, I'm actually happy with its current form. I was about to approve it.
Oh, cool. Okay. Neat. Let's see. Oh, and then we already talked a little bit about the RGW started cache thing that I made. Yeah, I'll look at your updated review, Casey. Blue Store cap OMAP naming scheme upgrade transaction. Okay, that's in testing now. I don't remember at all what that is. Oh, Igor's here now, though. Igor, I'm trying to remember, what is your PR, the cap OMAP naming scheme upgrade transaction? I don't remember what that does at all.
It fixes an issue with huge LFS writes when we are performing OMAP conversion to new format. So if your OMAP list is large, then we try to do that in a single transaction, and this causes some bad effects on LFS and distribution. So I tried to split that into multiple transactions.
Nice. Makes sense. All right, looks like that's in testing now, so hopefully that will be fine. Can anyone still hear me?
Now I can hear you.
Yep, I can hear you.
Yeah,
Oh, geez,
you were
I
lost
see people
for
are
some
trying to
time.
talk, but I don't hear you now.
Hello, Mark. Can you hear me?
All right.
I hear you,
I
Adam.
wonder if Josh Durgan can take over quickly then.
Hey, Mark, we can hear you.
I don't think Mark can hear us.
Here, I'm going to try to just rejoin quick. Hopefully it won't mess us up.
While Mark's trying to get his audio sorted out, one thing I wanted to bring up today was kind of brainstorming around different sorts of performance investigations that would be useful to do it over the next, say, 3 months, 6 months, a year sort of time frame, with either existing things that we haven't tested well enough or upcoming work that would be helpful to get more information on it in terms of performance and scalability. I noted down a couple of ideas in the Etherpad, but I just kind of wanted to open it up to other suggestions and discussing any of them in some more detail. So, Mark, you can hear us. Can you back now?
Yes, I can. I
Excellent.
don't know what happened, but all of a sudden I couldn't hear anyone anymore. So Josh, I mean, yeah, these look like good ideas. Seems like the edge use case would be really good. One thing that the Red Hat performance team worked on is I think they've got some kind of open source tool for running like Kubernetes performance tests, like storage performance tests.
I think it's called.
Yeah, exactly. So if they could like use that to do interesting like Kubernetes type testing, that's an area that we don't really explore a whole lot upstream. And they could do it upstream, right? That would be like really interesting to know.
Yeah, I mean, I think that they tend to do a lot of Kubernetes style testing anyway. So I'm not sure how different that would be from their existing testing. Is there some particular aspects you're thinking of?
Well, it seems like people keep coming up with like weird corner cases in containers that are causing problems. And I don't feel like, at least for me personally, I don't have a whole lot of insight into it. So just even periodically knowing that that's going okay would be good. See.
Josh, do you want to add here also balancing improvements?
Yeah, that's a good point. That would be an excellent one to test out. As we've spoken already, Josh, about improved balancer behavior for balancing reads in addition to writes.
Actually, also improving the current balancing and adding primary balancing on top of this. But yes.
Yes. Yes, that's right. The current, even the current algorithm is quite slow.
I don't know what the current state of testing is, but there's always interest in recovery versus client throughput and kind of where the state of that is. I don't know what their most recent data looks like on that, but
Yeah, I guess one area we haven't gotten to there as well as the partial recovery work, where we're able to essentially recover just the deltas applying to objects via the PG log instead of the entire object at once.
sure.
So we have no idea exactly how beneficial that is.
Yeah, that is something we are trying to see if we can get some help from our downstream folks to evaluate that feature. They did some testing with async recovery, so they have um, tooling to do recovery, testing recovery versus client IO testing. So just essentially use that or extend that to also evaluate partial recovery.
How about QoS in general? Is that something that would be worthwhile?
That's interesting. That's also on the list of the same group. They will be evaluating it once it's ready to be consumed. Once we feel at least the background recovery, like we currently have recovery that is covered by QoS in terms of background activities, but in master we've worked on other stuff, and we also including scrubbing. So maybe after a few months or like in the beginning of the next year, they can start consuming master builds and evaluate QoS to some extent.
Client QoS would also be really, not just like recovery or scrubbing or anything else like that, but actually making sure that some clients aren't starving other clients. We definitely know what's happening in certain situations. So being able to, yeah.
I think Sridhar can talk for us about this. He's already started looking into that bit, but yeah, I'm guessing that's going to take more time than the background bit.
Also, I think, if I understand correctly, currently what QoS is doing is limiting some of the clients so they're not going to starve other clients. But what it actually does, if the system is not loaded and you have only the clients with the low QoS, they actually blocked. They can't use the full performance of the system. System is idle because each one is blocked separately. So I think that trying to change its semantics to, block when the system is loaded, but try to give more performance when the system is not loaded, it's worth at least thinking. I have some ideas. I'm not sure. It's not necessarily a simple thing, but the idea that idle OSD is not going to serve too many requests because the client is blocked is somehow, weird to me.
Yeah, I think you're talking about a different kind of QoS, like the one that's kind of just doing pure throttling on the client side. What Dan and Sweet have been talking about is more the DM clock based QoS, which is much more dynamic and does enable clients to use more than just that pure throttle value if they're set up that way.
Yeah, that's the idea too.
Yeah, that's a good one to add to the list. I think it's still under development, but it may be ready for testing perhaps in a year, 6 months, who knows.
been quite a while, but if someone was interested in looking at the different erasure coding backends and kind of updated performance data on CPU utilization and that kind of thing, that would maybe be another interesting thing for somebody to do that wouldn't require a whole lot of coding.
And actually something which we currently try to think of with collaboration with academy. So it's really very early stages that we try to think of and go back to the QS is having different cache policies, giving more priority on cache for privileged clients rather than privileged workloads or whatever versus other workloads. So this is something that we do. It's really, really early. We may add this, but it's no commitment. It's just, it's a very early stage, but we may add this as a proof of concept to RGW to the D4M cache that is currently is on work pushing it upstream. So we may want, because this is probably the easiest place to put it for the students. So we may want to put such policies on this, but it also relates to adding more dimension to QoS, not just the request, but also splitting other resources such as cache, so to privileged workloads versus less privileged workloads.
If Casey and crew are okay with it, I may try to implement the priority cache scheme in RGW, which would maybe be one way that you could kind of approach that problem. The idea there is that you kind of dynamically balance resources based on different request levels coming from each individual cache. So you could kind of imagine a scenario where you could tie QoS into that.
Mm-hmm.
Josh, what do you think about fragmentation? I know that Adam's done a bunch of work on that, and it's kind of a complicated topic. Is that something that we'd want to have more kind of testing around?
Fragmentation is interesting, I guess. It's one of those things that really benefits from longer burn-in period testing and more sorts of realistic workloads. And what do you guys think? What kind of information don't we know about fragmentation, or what could we figure out from an investigation?
Is Igor still here, or did he had problems? That's too bad.
I think Adam's still here.
Yes, I'm still here.
Oh, good. Sorry, Adam, I didn't think that you were here earlier. It seems to me like on one hand, we want to be careful to make sure that we're actually not only advertising the most horrible scenarios we end up with fragmentation, but we also need truthful data to improve it, right?
the truth is that I don't have any procedure that I can test something and be realistically close to real world fragmentation. I just have no idea how to construct such a test. So I'm even have problem on that level, not even trying to address the problem. I don't even have a metric to measure it.
If we had people that could run real tests on some other cluster somewhere, do we have the tools where that we could measure or they could measure the fragmentation?
I guess the actual measurement of fragmentation would be a comparison between a performance we have from a current state of the cluster versus some ideal linearized or defragmented cluster. So not really. I mean, we can always redeploy without adding any extra data, redeploy all the OSDs, and then make a comparison. That would give us some info. But beside that, I don't have any idea for a tool to measure numerically and give a numeric value for quality of our fragmentation.
I'm not sure about it, but I think it is possible that you'd get on the same system part of the data which is less fragmented than others because of workloads that write workloads that write much more than other workloads. So you have workloads that write less and read a lot, and their data would be less fragmented probably than workloads that do a lot of writing. And I mentioned it because also we had some kind of high-level discussion. Gabi is not on the call, but I had some kind of discussions with Gabi regarding also taking this as the parameter for cache policies. They take the difference between data that is hard to get versus data that is easier to get from the devices. So this could also be some way to mitigate fragmentation, assuming the fragmentation, the part of the capacity which is highly fragmented is relatively small to the rest. So I'm not sure whether it's real world workload scenario, but I see how it can happen, that you have part of your workload is way more fragmented than the other. So I'm saying this with caution because we didn't measure it. It's just we played with some ideas on cache improvements.
One thing I'm a little regarding the fragmentation conversation. You know, for a while I have had the attitude of, well, you know, hard drives are on their way out eventually. Maybe this isn't as big of a deal, but now we're starting to get you know, these QLC flash drives that have like 64K allocation units. And I'm not sure kind of what allocators should look like going forward exactly. Is this, I don't know if this falls underneath like performance investigation or projects over the next year necessarily, but is it worth spending a lot of time thinking about the allocator and kind of how we want to proceed? Or is this something that is too far off and we should wait and have other more important projects to focus on now?
think in general we should probably be focusing more on stabilizing C-store and Crimson at this point rather than
Sure.
further Blue Store improvements. I think we've gotten quite a ways with Blue Store optimization already. And it's in
Yeah.
quite a good spot.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
What about performance investigations beyond Rados? Like things in Ceph or RGW or RBD? So we got
So,
Casey and Adam
go ahead.
as well. I mean, do you have any ideas for areas of RGW that would be ripe for investigation?
Let's see. Well, there's the regressions that Mark pointed out recently in the Beast front end, and Mark Hogan has started looking at that. I think that's going to be a project. I mean, there's kind of the long-term plan of the async request processing that should be able to drop the number of threads that we need drastically. And so further work to actually get to that point and then do performance comparisons will be another project.
Would you expect that to be like around like next year or so?
Good question. Nobody's working on it currently. So it's hard to give any estimate there.
Okay.
Let's see. There's a lot of work going on in S3 Select, and so I think looking at workloads that can accelerate that and do any performance tuning or optimization in that stuff. And then I think multi-site has a lot of unknown performance characteristics. So if somebody's interested in trying to work on that, could arrange a project around it.
What sorts of different aspects would be interesting to look at? For multi-site?
Yeah, good question. I feel like it's mostly unknown. But I think I would start by looking at polling overhead, maybe using some tracing to look at how long it takes from a write on one side to get through the replication path to the other side, and see if there's kind of algorithmic things that we can change to lower that time.
Casey, another thing that Matt and I had talked about a while back was potentially using the RGW file interface to run. It wouldn't be able to do a complete run of the IO 500, but we might be able to basically implement a RGW file at their abstraction layer to do some of it, the same way that we did with libcephfs. I don't know if that's particularly interesting to you guys or not, but it maybe would be a way to see if that RGW file is doing well.
Okay, you've discussed that with Matt. I know that RGW file has a a lot of limitations in terms of like write patterns that it supports, right? So I'm not sure that we could pass kind of a generic file system suite like that.
Yeah, exactly right. It would be. I talked to him just a little bit about it, like I don't know, 4 or 5 months ago or something. But it was the gist of it is I think we could implement some of the calls that happened in like their abstracted backend interface for IOR and MD test, but we wouldn't be able to do anything like you guys don't. I don't think it would allow like concurrent clients to write to the same file, right?
Good question. I'm not sure how that works. They might end up creating 2 separate instances of the file. You'd have to check with Matt.
Sure.
The
Yeah,
thing that I remember most is that one client can only write sequentially.
Oh, really? I didn't know that. So yeah, no idea if that's actually a good use of time or not, but it's something that came up in conversation.
Yeah, I don't know that our GW file is seeing that much use. Maybe if it was super fast, it would see more, but personally, I would be more interested in the HTTP path.
Yeah, multi-site especially seems like it could be a pretty ripe area for investigation. What about different kinds of background operations that RGW does, like GC or lifecycle?
Yeah, I know that Matt did a pass of GC for the did a lot of threading work there. Not so sure about lifecycle. Maybe there's room for improvement there.
I guess, do we have like controls in place for kind of trying to limit the background operations effect on client apps in RGW?
Not at all, no. That was something that we were looking at the OSD's QoS to help with, to at least be able to issue those as separate request classes.
Right.
Sounds like there's been enough progress in the OSD that we could revisit the Librados interfaces to support that.
Yeah, Sweetheart is taking a look at those right now, actually. Trying to revive Eric's old patches.
Oh, cool. Yeah, I might have to start rejoining the QoS calls, or at least find somebody interested in that.
Sure, that'd be great. Yeah, I'm sure
suppose
it'll be a little while before it's all ready to use, but that's what we're looking for right now.
As long as we're talking about RGW and CephFS, we could throw in adding the priority cache manager to both.
Yeah, that's a good point for memory usage in particular.
Yeah, and for just both memory usage and then also potentially smart balancing of disparate caches, especially if we add H-binning support for those. There was an effort in CephFS for the MDS to do something that was like what we do with the priority cache manager, but it was like a totally different implementation. it's been sitting there for like 2 years, I think. So maybe it's worth just sitting down and actually using the priority cache manager and the glue code, perfect glue code for PCML to do it the same way we do it in the other daemons.
Mm-hmm.
Casey, other than that cache that I was messing around with, do you guys have any other like caches in RGW that are worth thinking about?
I think you had to drop for.
Oh, sure, the stand-up.
As to that, the main cache that we have is the system object cache. That basically hangs on to a bunch of metadata for us, like buckets and users, that sort of thing. There is a refactor of that going on, I believe, as part of the store abstraction layer work. I think Daniel mentioned that rather than having a unified system object that tries to cover everything, that it would be broken out, but I don't know the details that he was planning.
Okay, cool. So, yeah, the priority cache maybe would be useful for controlling memory growth of the process, but you might not need a whole lot of balancing between different caches depending on how that looks, but might still be useful.
Yeah, I guess speaking of caching, there's also the working RGW around like D3N caching for storing local copies of objects.
Yeah.
I think the research group around that had fed some performance testing themselves. I'm not sure if it was more that would be interesting to look at there.
Yeah, I know they're working on it, but I don't think it's got merged in yet. There were some disagreements not exactly how to implement it last I heard.
Okay. Maybe a further future thing then. Anything else? Other areas in RGW that you can think about them?
The async request processing is the main one. We've been wanting to do that for a while, but we keep getting steamrolled by multi-site, basically.
Mm-hmm.
I think multi-site could suck many FTEs into it.
Yeah, basically.
What about areas in Ceph then, Mark? I know you've done a fair bit of testing there in the past.
Yeah. So someone could go and figure out how to refactor and clean up this PR from Zhang and then test this thing, because that has been on my list for a while, and it's
Pretty massive.
It is very massive, and very few people understand it. But it's there, and I think it's needed still. There's lots of other stuff. I mean, the kind of question about what we should do regarding dynamic subtree partitioning versus kind of the ephemeral pinning. Neither are ideal, it seems. And with ephemeral pinning, it's not a bad idea, but with the way that random distributions work and the number of directories that you're kind of spreading stuff across, you still end up with this really lumpy, clumpy distribution, unless you have just a huge number of directories and clients. It's not bad. It works better than dynamic subtree partitioning in a lot of cases, but there are cases it doesn't cover, and even in the cases where it's good, it's not like as good as it could be if you did something like perfect round robin distribution. I don't know exactly how we deal with that, but that is an area of research that would be really beneficial for SFFS, I think. Someone could investigate locking in that whole distributed cache scheme. It looks like there's a lot of areas where that could be improved dramatically, but I'm not sure I even remotely, I know I do not understand it well enough to even really ask the right questions right now. And someone else might be able to, but there are very few people that understand that code well. Caps. I'm sure there's performance stuff related to how caps work. Beyond the distributed cache locking behavior, the actual threading inside the MDS itself is all kind of governed by one big lock. And it's possible that could also be broken up, maybe, but that's also really complicated. I think that was something.
Big project.
Yeah, Zhang, I think, was going to look at it at one point, but we'll have to find somebody else now, probably. On the testing side, I mean, like the IO500 is not bad. Honestly, they did a relatively good job of making kind of a comprehensive testing benchmark focused more on big parallel, HPC style workloads. But it's not bad.
And last time you were in that was that, which version was that on? Is that Nautilus?
I did something this past spring with Pacific, I think. Maybe it was Master. I don't remember. That was when we were trying to look at whether or not they changed ephemeral pinning to no longer work on subdirectories, but to work on dir frags instead. And I think the hope was that we'd be able to improve the situation where you have lots of clients all doing work in a single directory. And unfortunately, it didn't really do anything different than the way it was currently behaving. I think you're still dominated by needing to do updates on the authoritative MDS for subtree maps for all things happening in that directory, even if individual pieces are being handled by other MDSs. I think that's sort of, if I remember right, what I thought was going on. So really, I mean, MDS stuff, to me, we're actually fast in CephFS for like big like sequential write workloads or even big random write workloads or reads or whatever. If you've got like big files, it's and you're doing big I/O, it's great. It's when you have like a directory full of a ton of small files that we are slow for a variety of different reasons. And we can even, I mean, you can just kind of blow CephFS up depending on what you're doing sometimes with really horrible workloads like this. So that's kind of the stuff that it's a big job. I mean, you could spend years probably working on this.
Yeah, it'd be great to get Patrick's thoughts too. If there's any more improvements being made in the area.
Yeah, right. I mean, I have my own biases on all this. This is my take on it. But...
Yeah, of course. What about anything with RBD?
There's like with RGW, there's this RBD project for doing client-side persistent caching.
Right.
I was helping somebody with that recently, testing it, and it was slower than not using it. Mm-hmm. And there seemed to be a lot of client-side lock contention in the cache implementation for some reason. And so they were working on trying to understand what was going on. It's a project, right? But I think people are already working on it.
Yeah. And there is an ongoing effort to make a proof of concept NVMe or Fabrics gateway for RBD. Once that gets off the ground, it'll be interesting to see how that performs.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a whole slew of Crimson stuff, right?
Yes. I think a lot of that Crimson stuff is kind of further off in terms of optimization. But I did put C-store tuning idea at the top. Applies to Crimson in general too. Just there's going to be lots of unknowns there. I'm sure we'll find lots of interesting bottlenecks that we'll want to optimize.
Yeah, I mean the other really big one this year I think is multi-reactor.
Yes.
Yeah, that has to happen. Actually, the work I've been doing this week is more or less to try to, kind of very, very vaguely and roughly simulate what we maybe could possibly see when we do it for real. Oh, I've got a silly one to add too. I've been working on making MemStore and possibly ScienceStore nicer. It's really unimportant, but it's
Yeah, doesn't hurt to add it. Have you ever tried much running a RAM disk underneath BlueStore or something like that?
Sorry, what was that, Josh?
Have you ever tried running BlueStore on a RAM disk or?
Yes, I have in the past. It's very, very similar to running it on a really fast NVMe drive.
Okay.
Um,
We still
there
have
are
lots
a
of
couple.
bottlenecks probably that we wouldn't hit in memstore or Cyan-store.
Yeah, yeah. Well, the funny thing is actually BlueStore is faster than memstore is in some cases. A little sad, but it seems to be the case.
Well, we
I
haven't
would
put
very much like.
that many man hours into optimizing memstore compared to BlueStore.
Yeah, exactly right. Yeah, yeah. Um, and I suspect that like I think we create an ordered map for OMAP in every single object. So it's like, that's probably not super ideal. It would actually be really interesting to make a version of memstore that like didn't use objects at all and tried to just store data in other ways. That would be I'd be curious do well. But in any event, yeah, it'd be nicer to at least make memstore, better, consistently better than BlueStore is.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, well, this is a pretty good list, and I've got to run today, like, fortunately, but I'm hoping we can talk about some more of these things in the future. Maybe get some more feedback from other folks who couldn't make it today.
Yeah, sounds good. All right, anything else, guys?
Mark, no offense, but I will try to ever make a BlueStore faster than memstore.
Yeah, I agree. That was actually the take I had with Crimson and Cyan-store early on too. Is that those guys would work on Crimson, but I would try to keep making the classic OSD faster to give them challenge.
One thing I wanted to say, maybe not today, but maybe in meeting or something. We've covered topics like feature performance investigation stuff, but it'd be really nice to have some performance gates in master as such. I know every now and then we run into issues where we have to go back and do bisects, etc., compare with Pacific, and go through this whole cycle again after something causes a regression. So how can we make sure that we have some automated performance gates, or like even if it's manual, I don't know, but just to make sure that these kind of regressions don't get caught later.
So I'm a little confused, Niha, because I thought that was what the thing that Radek and Kifu did, where they can have Jenkins automatically. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean that just runs for Crimson, and currently I think it's broken because of some dependency issues, etc.
Well,
that's something that Radek was trying to fix.
Yeah, it might be broken, but I swear I thought that they made it work for classic OSD as well.
Then that's something we should again revisit, I guess.
Yeah, it might be broken. It's probably broken, right?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's broken, not broken, doing the right thing, not doing the right thing, maybe worth looking at, because clearly it didn't catch things.
That's my whole kind of lack of enthusiasm for this kind of stuff is that it feels like anytime anyone ever makes something like this, it works for a little while and then it breaks because it's so hard to maintain and keep these things running consistently. Like, we might be able to make it work, and maybe it works for a while as long as, nothing changes too much. But it almost seems like it's as much work maintaining it and keeping it going as it is to go and do the bisect every once in a while. I mean,
it's almost like we try to make the radar suite all green, and then suddenly something merges and it breaks everything. So you're back to square one. So yeah, I guess I mean it is a difficult problem, but I guess I mean yeah, and just like we've had some issues recently and even earlier, so just trying to get back some focus on it, and even it has to be manual intervention required, like every 3 months or every 4 months, we do the sweep of tests, which could be automated. Like, you leave a test running over the weekend and it captures some results that we can look at. That would also be a good start.
Yeah. One of the trickiest things in this kind of thing is if you're doing it like every 3 or 4 months, what happens if something else changed, right? Like, what if something on the system changed? New kernel, new driver. Maybe it wasn't rebooted recently. I mean, all of this stuff is like, it makes it really hard. So you almost want to be doing it every night or every day, and then be able to say something changed here. Was it code or was it something else? But then that requires a lot of resources, and it requires keeping it running and making sure it keeps working, and that's also a lot of work. So
maybe we want to revisit. So I was just talking to Adam about this, the automated performance tests that we run in every tautology run. So essentially, we are running the performance tests on every Rados PR, because the Rados suite has at least Rados Bench and FIO. So it's a matter of just looking at it, or like, making it more easily visible is probably something we can start with.
Yeah. I mean, theoretically, it could be a really good intern project, but it is complicated and a lot of data.
Yep.
Right,
I don't want to keep folks any longer, but topic for some other meeting.
Sounds good. All right. Well, have a great day, everyone. See you next week.
Thank you, guys.
Bye bye.
Thanks.
Thanks.
You
Bye
too.
bye.
Thank you.